Hey everybody, this is Drew here, going solo at the moment. JC is not with us. He will hopefully join us during the interview, but we have a really cool show that I've been looking forward to, and I'll introduce our guest after the intro.
Welcome to the Watchers Podcast Network, the only source for film, TV, horror, music, pro wrestling, stand-up comedy, and the paranormal, all in one channel. If you're a fan of our shows, please like, subscribe, and share with your friends.
You what is the best? You got the best, the hardest part in the world.
Yeah, tonight the Watchers brings you a what I hope to be a very interesting episode. Joining me tonight is Christie Harris. I believe I said that correctly.
You did.
Okay. If you don't mind, you can go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit and tell us about your Facebook group.
Hi, my name is Christie Harris. I am the creator of the Facebook group Unidentified, Nameless, and Never Forgotten. We were featured in the documentary They Called Him Mostly Harmless. We were directly involved with the solving of the case of Mostly Harmless, also known as Vance Rodriguez.
Right. And that documentary is actually how I learned of you and your group. So I know that the documentary is out there and it exists, but I was wondering if we might be able to chat a little bit about the process of that investigation.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Cool. So if anybody's not familiar, the documentary is on HBO Max, I believe,
Correct.
and it documents the investigation of a hiker who was found dead inside of a tent, and he didn't have anything to identify him, and the work that a bunch of people did together to figure out his identity and put a name to the face. And your group, like you said, had a lot to do with that. So I'm curious, did your group already exist during the time of this investigation, or did it come to fruition
It
after?
it already existed. Well, in its previous form. First, it was who is the missing hiker or whatever the name was. I don't even remember at this point. And when it became a group consensus that after his case we wanted to continue and do others, the name changed.
Okay. But so his case would have been the first one that you
Yes.
worked on. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, uh, is what is your like? Do you consider yourself? I don't like the term personally, but like, what would you consider you and your group to be internet sleuths?
I consider myself a citizen detective. I don't like the term internet sleuth at all.
Yeah, I don't like it. It's like a very broad, condescending kind of term, but it's like colloquially out there at this point.
Exactly.
Um, so how did you discover the mostly harmless case?
I I'm one of these people who I had started getting interested in Jane and John Doe's, and I'm one of these people who will pop open a laptop when I'm bored or whatever, looking for something to do, and I just start surfing the net and kind of he found me, I found him, kind of thing.
Okay, so just kind of stumbled upon it, and at that point, just you stumble on it, and is it like an instant infatuation, or
No, it wasn't. And I wouldn't. There was like nothing like that. It was like I read the case and I go, they have photos of him. Somebody is gonna say something.
and
I just kind of kept on going,
okay,
and I would circle back to it and go, well, what? Nobody. And then I would circle back to it, and I would circle back to it, and after that, I was like, yeah, this isn't right.
how long did it take to identify him?
Give or take about 6 months.
Okay, wow. That is mind blowing, considering that they had photographs, like you said.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, do you think they were dragging their feet? Like, what wasn't like a like an important case to them that
Mm,
manpower was being dedicated to?
no, Vance. What I'll be the first one to say he was extremely intelligent. He didn't want to be found to be who
Hmm.
he was. He went out. They did a podcast. They started a podcast specifically to get him out there. And basically, there was a statement in there: if you want to erase your identity, do what he did.
Oh, cool! I didn't know that there was a podcast about it. I'm gonna have to check it out because I thought the whole story was very just interesting. Like it didn't leave my head for a while. Like even though
It
that there
doesn't.
was some kind of conclusion to it, it felt unfinished to me still a little bit. At least the way that the documentary was presented. You you kind of you learn the identity, but you don't really learn of the man, so to speak.
Right. I would agree with that completely.
Yes. What did you think of the documentary turned out? Now it has been a little while since I watched it. I think I almost immediately reached out to you.
You did.
Wow, and so I think my initial thoughts were there was kind of an overall narrative that was being pushed, and it wasn't quite exploring all of the facets of the story.
No, it wasn't. The whole story was not told.
What did they miss, or what did they choose to ignore about it?
All they really showed was his dark side.
Yeah, that was pretty heavily featured. They essentially leaned pretty heavily into the abuse allegations from ex-girlfriends and stuff, and um, that's about it. I didn't even think that they spent a lot of time on the journal
His
of coding that he had.
No, they didn't. They didn't at all, really. That was the hardest part of the case because I'll be the first one to tell you, when it comes to computers, no, not like that.
Yeah, no, my co-host is very good at that. It's unfortunate that he wasn't here because he's a tech guy, and he has
Yeah.
another podcast on the side that he does that's like all tech related. So I'm sure he would have been really into that aspect of the story itself.
That was
Out,
the that was kind of the first thing we attacked to see if it told us anything.
what was what was the process of that? I mean, coming from the outside, I don't think I would have figured out that it was coding for a game at all.
Well, I wouldn't have for sure. Basically, it was, do we have anybody in here who knows anything about computers and coding? And several people volunteered to tell us, to have either they looked at it or their husband looked at it or their son looked at it or whatever to see if they could figure out what it was.
Do you remember how many people were helping assist at the time?
Close to 1,000
Oh
were
wow,
in the group. Yeah.
that's it's crazy that this was such a hot topic, and I had not even heard of it until the documentary came out myself. It just somehow slipped right by me, but it seems like it was something the entire country was kind of keeping an eye on.
I'm finding that out more and more. My goal always was to get him out as far and as fast as I could. Hopefully, I helped with that a little bit.
Do you think that there's an overall kind of underlying issue with Jane and John Doe's that might be similar to that there isn't a focus nationwide on these types of cases?
I would agree with that. On average, unless there's something special about the case, like a serial killer or something like that, most Jane or John Does only get about 2 weeks of coverage. And that's it. Law enforcement doesn't have the capabilities to go, they don't have the funding to try to identify them. They just simply don't. And they're getting hit with case after case after case after case. As I had one law enforcement officer tell me, you guys can focus on one or two cases. We have hundreds.
Yeah, I guess that's a fair point.
They just don't have the time and they don't have the capabilities. I had one agency tell me that they have the funding to do one genealogy case a year. One.
Uh, that would be like DNA testing on.
The advanced DNA testing to find their family tree, yes.
Wow, only one per year.
One per year.
That- I
There are
wonder if
places there are places that have cases that go as far back as the 1960s.
yeah, that yes, that I think like there should absolutely be some type of larger scale effort for this kind of thing. I wonder, do you know if this is like if this is like a county level or federal level, or did it
Well,
have?
at the federal level, they have NamUs, which is the national website for missing and unidentified persons. The goal is to get as many in there as you can, but that's even a difficulty because if you don't have a police report, you cannot get in a NamUs.
Okay,
You
and
can't, they won't put you there. I also do some missing persons work, and I have one case right now because we got her ruled out as a Jane Doe. The agency was able to thankfully put her into NCIC and CODIS, but we still don't have a police report.
um, what? How long does a person have to be missing before they start to even investigate it as a missing person?
That can vary. That's a loaded question because it can vary with the agency. There are some agencies that will take it immediately. Some agencies will say wait 24 hours. I've heard the gamut on stories. Uh, the cases that I take to try to help families are normally somebody who has been missing a long period of time. Both of them that I have right now have been missing 25 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Uh, and do people bring these cases to you, or do you kind of stumble on them like you
I
did with?
triple. I will be the first one to tell you, I trip over them.
So they just
Uh,
kind of just right in front of you, and you just kind of.
like for example, I'm looking for a Vietnam vet who's he was sailing from Big Pine Key, Florida, to Maryland to meet the family, and he never appeared. And I saw his daughter posting in a Facebook group, and I go, "Let me help you." It
And
took it took some time, but she let me help her.
so there is sometimes resistance that you face from the other side of the coin, so to speak.
No, it's more like, who is this weirdo asking to help me with my missing person kind of thing. The documentary has helped that to some degree. When I met Henry's daughter, uh, it was before the documentary.
Yeah, okay. And then, yeah, I would imagine that that's obviously solidified your
It's
stance and public image a bit.
Yes, it
So,
has. We've actually had law enforcement actually come into the group, and I've been told by several that we're doing a very good thing. One that was retired brought me a flyer of a sexual assault case, and even I was able, with help of others, to put together some connections, and he's like, "You're doing better than law enforcement right this minute."
that's got to be gratifying to have. I had assumed that just in general, the law enforcement agencies might kind of be annoyed or look down on what you guys are doing. But I mean, to hear them be that appreciative and to have those kinds of words, like it'd probably be, like I said, just kind of a gratifying feeling.
It's, I wouldn't say gratifying, it's more shocking, because I would have expected the same thing. Because I try to run it as they would, and I try to be I hate to put it this way, I try to think about it as they would, because in the end, they're the ones that have to make the case.
Yeah, and do you find resistance from them in that regard? Like once you've spent X amount of time and you're collecting this evidence, and it's time to actually start to put it in folders and get it to them. Uh, are they taking it as seriously as you would expect them to, or does it kind of fall into like we'll get to it when we get to it?
I never get a "we'll get to it when we get to it." No, I
Yes.
never have gotten that. Uh, Normally, by the time it's gotten to law enforcement, if it's in my hands to go there, I have enough of an argument that they have to look at it. They have to look at it and go, yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's that's kind of it's really cool what you're doing. Like I never would have expected that. Just kind of this. I mean, would you call it? I mean, is it? I mean, obviously, it's more than just a hobby for you, but is it fair to say that this is something that maybe started as a hobby and has kind of turned into something that you're actually making a difference with?
This is the way my sister puts it, and it's probably a very good way to put it. I had wanted to be an FBI profiler when I was in middle school, high school, and It didn't happen. Life happened. So it didn't happen. Her exact way of putting it is that my urge to chase serial killers kind of morphed into finding who the victims are.
Have you found victims of serial killers?
No, Vance is the first case. There are victims. Well, the woman that I'm looking for in New York, she was actually ruled out as a victim of the Long Island serial killer. Um, she, yeah, she went. She, bleh. We thought she could be. Um, at that time, well, we know now her name is Karen Vergata. We thought she was the Fire Island Jane Doe. They had gone missing about a month apart.
How did you distinguish between the two? Like, how did you end up finding the identity?
I didn't find the identity. I made the case for it, and the agency that ruled it out found it is the one who ruled it out. We can
Okay, so
only get to yeah, we can only get to a certain point. There are only certain things that we have access to, and DNA is not one of them. Which, I'll be honest, I wouldn't want access to it. At that point, I have to be able to make my case to the agency that, look, this is the situation, this is what I'm seeing, that there's a physical resemblance, the dates line up, everything seems to match up. We can link this, we can link that. At that point, if I've got enough evidence, they're willing to listen and go forward. With her, they were willing to go forward because there was enough there.
how many cases do you work on at a time? I know you said that you have two right now that you're working on, but you said you stumble on these things as well. Do you ever?
I have one right now. I kind of say when I do missing persons, try to limit myself to 3. And I have one right now that we are trying to get set up. And it's kind of strange. She found me because the missing person was evidently on a billboard in the documentary. And
Uh,
they came to look for me.
oh,
Yeah.
so it was on a billboard in the Mostly Harmless.
That's what they told me. I haven't watched it to go specifically to look for that. I think she said it was in the last part of it.
Okay, so then they reached out to you because I mean, probably for the same reason I reached out, that you were so heavily featured.
Right. Well, that, and they basically they're like, her face is there. It's a sign.
And that's one that you're working on taking on right now.
Right. Well, it's got a lot of issues.
Are you able to talk about it?
Well, first of all, right now, what we're trying to do, what I normally do with a missing persons case, if family has come to me, the first thing we do is download to GEDmatch and Family Tree DNA, so that if someone somewhere has them as an unidentified person, there's something there for them to hit on. I get them to have a public family tree and try to set them up that way, so that's set up. The other issue, and we're having issues with that because she's having technical issues. That's the best way to put it.
Okay.
And from what I'm being told, law enforcement is not talking to them. So I've kind of told her what they need to try to do before I try to jump in and talk to law enforcement.
Is that something that you could potentially get in trouble for doing? I know that, like, for instance, you're not supposed to give legal advice if you're not a lawyer. Does
No,
that
no,
fall
not
under
like
that
that.
same kind of
No,
stuff?
no, not
No.
like that. No. It's basically, I tell them to go try to talk to the detective. In this case, she's got a couple of leads and tips that they've gotten. And to be honest, she doesn't know if the detective even has them.
Okay, that has to be aggravating on all
Their part.
fronts.
Right. And what I try to do is, to me, it's empowering the family to have their own voice.
So, it's in a sense, you're still working as an advocate, even though the information that you needed has kind of dried up and stalled at the moment.
Exactly. Basically, this case specifically is a cold case.
And how many people in your group would also be working on this with you, like at the same time in
The
conjunction?
missing persons cases are normally just me. There are people in there that work on their own. I have one specifically that in Kansas is working on her cousin's case.
Interesting. Okay, so you're taking a lot on just by yourself.
It is. It
Your
is.
group, I think, had over 12,000 people, right?
12.1 at this moment, yes.
And so, are those um, other people that are doing this, or fans, or people that are just kind of almost watching? I would assume that, like, you got what you're
I would
doing.
say I would say C, all of the above.
Yeah, because I can imagine that there's almost a I hate to phrase it like this, but like an entertainment value to it, or almost that people watching somebody work on these and kind of figure things out to progress a case may create some type of fan base that are there to watch.
Yeah, in some cases we call them tragedy tourists.
It's
There are people who, well, this is the problem that a lot of people have with the whole true crime genre per se. A lot of people don't realize this is a real person's life that you're
right.
walking into. They, in some cockeyed sort of way, think it's some scripted thing and it's not real. And they don't get it. You're actually helping a person.
Yeah, I I didn't even think of it in that kind of manner. I love that phrase, tragedy tourist. Like, that's spot on for
Oh, yeah.
what's happening there. And I don't know, there is a weird obsession. I know the true crime genre is so huge, and it has been for a long time. It almost like taps into that through your brain that makes you that, maybe not you or I, but a person stand and watch a car accident or a building on fire.
That's a good way to put it, yes. And because of the way in some cases it's depicted, people don't get it, that it's real. And
Yeah,
this
and
is
then
someone's tragedy.
and then there's podcast after podcast after podcast with overproduced ambiance music while they're narrating a story, and everything that did happen to an individual, a human being, is then kind of put through that entertainment system, and it just kind of
And
churns and churns.
there are some podcasts that are trying to help. With our new unidentified case, there's actually one that I kind of tell people, you go listen to that and then come back, basically, because she does her best to help law enforcement as much as she can.
Yeah. Have you ever considered doing a podcast that is based off of what you're doing, maybe providing the updates or new cases that if you talked about now with your newfound profile, that maybe some others who have similar interests might you know take an interest?
I would, yes, I have considered doing my own podcast. The problem is the editing part of it. I'm not that technical and all of that. That's not a me thing. I can write, I can talk all day long, but if it comes to editing it, that's not in my wheelhouse.
Yeah. Well, programs are really good for that. So if you ever, find yourself with the inclination to do it, the one that we're using now in particular is kind of the gold standard,
Mm-hmm.
uh, being StreamYard. And the one thing that I like about it, even with my background, is, I used to work in film and I do a lot of
Mm-hmm.
editing and graphics and design and all that stuff. Audio editing is about the most tedious thing that you'll ever
Yeah.
do, and I hate it. I don't know a single podcaster that loves sitting down and editing. This program, actually, the way it's designed is while we're talking, it's using
Mhm.
AI to kind of do that for you. So the finished
Oh.
product that we get, as long as you're happy with everything in between and you don't want to cut anything,
Mm-hmm.
generally is what I put up. I do basically little to no editing, and that's why I have my intro and my outros as part of our recording, so that way I don't have to add that later.
Ah.
So yeah, and there is. I mean, I have one of the paid tiers, but a lot of people I know use the free one. The only difference is I don't have the little duck. There's a duck logo up
Mm-hmm.
in the corner here. I'll show you. I don't know if you see it. I just put it. It's on the top right there. Powered by StreamYard, and it has this little
Oh,
duck.
I see that. Yeah, I do see
Yeah,
that.
I'm able to take that off because I'm on the paid tier and I have a little bigger storage. But the free one is essentially 100% the same thing. You just have the little duck up there. So it's definitely an option to consider. Um, I think with what you're doing, that type of podcast in particular would it'd be a lot different, at least more so than the true crime pods that I've listened to in the past. Because I mean, you're not really going over a case that's kind of occurred and moving on to another one. You're almost it would kind of be the podcast form of Unsolved Mysteries or
It would
America's
kind
Most
of be,
Wanted.
or kind of like Up and Vanished.
Yeah.
Oh.
So I think that there's a lot of potential in that. So if you ever do that, I would definitely keep an eye out for it, and I would imagine be quite supportive for it because I, I think what you're doing is really important. And there's so many people that are we're all connected all the time, and how many people are just scrolling through TikTok watching dumb videos when there are just for perspective, these people are missing, and in some cases like the ones you're working on, 25 years or even more. And so many of us in society are just scrolling, looking at people do tricks or Bigfoot videos. In my case, I'm guilty of it too. I take that responsibility, but um, yeah, I think more of us should be cognizant to what's going on in a way that you are.
And that's what's so strange. I'm going to be the first one to tell you I've never had anyone go missing in my life at all. And that's the first question that people ask me. And this is just what I'm supposed to be doing.
Have you ever considered maybe doing a book or writing something along the lines of a um, nonfiction work covering what you're doing?
I've actually been considering a blog to start
Blog.
with.
Okay, yeah, because I think it was Patton, if you're familiar, Patton Oswalt, the comedian, his wife.
Yes, Michelle McNamara. She's one of my heroes, to be exact.
Oh, really? Yeah, so
She,
you're familiar with the Golden State?
yes, very much so. She was kind of a little bit of the cattle prod because they kept showing that section of her I'll Be Gone in the Dark where they were talking about her being in her kid's room with her laptop looking at crime scenes on Google Earth. And I'm going, wait a minute, I can do that.
Yeah, that was a pretty intense documentary.
Yes. We actually have, I know a few of either his victims or families that I've been able to talk to.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I imagine that is generally pretty heavy conversation.
Yes, it is. It's a very heavy conversation. One of them's actually a writer.
And is that something that you've reached out to them, or did they find you like others have now been able to find you?
No, I've known her for a while. So it's kind of, I don't actually remember how her and I started talking. But yeah, it just kind of happened, basically.
That's cool. It's like one of those, it happened because it was supposed to happen things,
Kind of
perhaps.
thing.
Um, that's awesome. I am trying to branch out. When we started, it was 100% pure paranormal conversation
Right.
and cryptid stuff. And 9 months later, and a nice little cult following that I think will follow us wherever we go.
Mm-hmm.
I just I see stories like the mostly harmless case, or we just talked about the Golden State Killer case,
Or
and
like, or like the one that we're working on in the group right now, the Vanderbilt Jane Doe.
right, and I I feel like like I said, I have a bit of a following,
Yeah.
and if I am able in any way, shape, or form to use, I hate the word platform. Like, I hate when people say platform, but if I'm able to use this platform in a way that could be beneficial or helpful to someone in need, or to even if the answers that you get are negative or like the worst case scenario, at least it would maybe, it closure and bring peace. If we at the Watchers can even assist in any way with that process of helping, I want to do that. So I'm starting with you, but I'm hoping to have as many people on in a similar regard or a similar fashion as to like these conversations. And I want to spotlight the stuff that you guys are doing, because I don't think enough people are, and I think what you're doing is super cool and super special. So um,
It was when we started what we were doing, we didn't know what we were going to do. It was, as I will tell them in the group, I will tell them it was trial by fire. It was okay. We throw this out. Didn't work. Okay, great. Try something else until we figured it out. And that it was kind of a process of that.
Yeah, and I mean, I understand processes. You know, they say in like YouTube channels or generally all creative arts is like your first is your worst, and that's kind of like a really morbid thought to have when you're applying it to what you're doing. But I guess it kind of does apply that like the
It
first
really,
is always the worst, and
it does. Yes. It's, and every case is a little bit different. We try to, it makes it a unique challenge because you have to tailor it, I guess is the best word for each separate case because no two cases are alike.
right. Uh, so I hate to say like I have a fun idea when dealing with this type of subject matter,
Hmm.
but I know several of our listeners are super intelligent and very investigative.
Hmm.
So I was curious here if you can maybe give some information about the cases that you're working on so that maybe people listening might then be able to lend a hand, or maybe they'll catch a bug and this is their version of stumbling on something and that they can be helpful.
Okay. Right now in the group, the unidentified person we're working on is known as Vandy, Vandy, Jane Doe, or Vanderbilt Jane Doe. She was a biracial female, um, black and Italian. And she's aged 15 to 25, 5 foot to 5'5". And she was found on the side of the road in Nashville. She was extremely decomposed, and what makes her unique is that she was wearing gear for Vanderbilt College from head.
Oh, we lost her there for a second.
Okay.
You're back. Yep. So you were saying that she was
She
in
was,
Vanderbilt College.
yes, she was in gear for Vanderbilt University from head to toe. The only thing that was missing from her were her shoes and the necklace around her neck. The charm was missing.
And what year was
She
this?
was found September 8th, 2018.
Okay, so relatively recent then.
Yes, she was within the last 6 years.
Okay, and is that all of the information that
Within
you
reason. She was found in the 4400 block of Cedar Creek Road. Excuse me. Sulphur Springs, Sulphur Creek Road. Blech. In Nashville. She was in the woods, but not in the woods, if that makes sense.
well, in
And
Pennsylvania, I think we kind of call that the brush, but I've never heard
yeah,
anyone outside of Pennsylvania use that phrasing.
she was hidden. Well, and I say it that way because the videos and the pictures that we've seen of law enforcement there, it kind of looks like there are trees growing up around it, but not quite. At least that's what it looks like to me. In a recent thing, it appears that there may be a fence there. Even we're still
Yeah.
looking at that.
And um, I mean, you can only speculate, I guess, at this point. But do you have a general sense of what might have led to this occurring?
What could have gotten her there? Oh, there's so many thoughts and theories on what could have gotten her there that it's insane. We've thought sexual assault, um, that she was dosed because there were drugs in her system. We've thought domestic violence, possibly. There's too many, honestly, sadly. Um, we've thought that there was a football game on September 1st. There was a football game. It was Middle Tennessee versus Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt won. And the stadium is about 34 minutes away from where she was found.
Okay, so man, so my first inclination in that is that uh, I mean, surely, I mean, I assume like you would hope that police have looked into this, but there should be
The
some
first,
kind of camera footage between uh, a stadium and wherever she wound up.
it was a packed stadium.
Right. Yeah. I guess. I mean, you're looking at thousands of people. It'd be like a Where's
Exactly.
Waldo?
Basically, yeah. We've had people looking at videos of the game on YouTube, photos, anything that we can find of around that game, and nothing so far has popped up. But there were thousands of people there, which
Right.
makes it even more difficult.
Right. Yeah. I guess I have that stupid brain where I'm influenced by watching like Chicago PD, and they spend like 2 minutes on a laptop and they run it through a system and they just find whatever they find. I
And
understand
that's,
it's not reality, unfortunately.
well, some of those TV shows are based in some point, have some tiny grain of reality, but no case is solved in 15 minutes. And I've been seeing that a lot lately because of everyone that's new. That cases aren't a sprint, they're a marathon, and you have to work through it.
Yeah, I guess that might be another aspect of this I wasn't even considering. You just said you have new people, so I like everything else. Attention spans are really short, and everybody kind of expects instant gratification. I'm
Mhm.
curious, do you see a correlation between perhaps that occurring and people, I hate to say it, but losing interest or getting bored because there isn't a
Uh,
quick
So far, I haven't had a getting bored. No one has told me that. The thing that they're getting is frustrated because they don't feel like they're making progress. That's kind of
right,
the reason when I investigate a case, we have a two prong approach. We work with what we work with for whatever case it is, but we always have flyers going out in the hope of someone seeing them. Basically, I kind of take the opinion of I don't care which side solves it. If the flyer gets it, that's fine. If we find something within the evidence there is fine. Just let's get it out there and see what happens. My goal always is when I'm doing flyers is to get whoever that case is up high enough that basically they can go viral.
right. And so I guess obviously the most important aspect would be, using internet and technology, but do you do any like street team stuff? I know that
Yes,
that might seem
now
outdated, but
it's not. We do now because that's one thing the documentary did bring. We have a lot of people that are willing to help. People are making trips to Nashville actually to put up flyers. With Vandy, we have 4 states that she may have family in: Georgia, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Texas. And we've had different people going either A, within that state, going and putting flyers up, or actually calling or emailing people asking them to put a flyer up. Um, we've just started being able to we just got approval actually from one of my moderators, got us into the Austin Central Library to put a flyer up.
okay, yeah, I imagine that probably sees a lot of eyes.
Right. That's always my goal. You want to put a flyer where it's going to A, stay the longest, and B, get as much traffic as possible.
Yeah, and that's a good spot for it. I imagine there's probably tons of traffic and people who might not necessarily be paying attention to technology. I know it's crazy to think, but there are some people out who, I mean,
Oh,
that still don't have, a smartphone,
right.
and they absolutely would find themselves in a library at some point.
Exactly. They're people who take their kids to story time.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
sometimes it's something as simple as they're seeing it in a different way at a different time. That they go, oh, wait a minute. And it sparks something. And they call or they email me. My email is on that flyer.
Yeah, and uh, I would imagine that probably jumps out being in that type of environment too, because it's almost like peacocking, where it's so out of space there that it completely draws your attention. Um,
That's why I like to go with the colored flyers because they just kind of pop out at you.
yeah, post office too. I feel like would probably be a good spot for something like that.
Um, I just don't know how long they'd stay there.
True. Um, so is
We,
there? Oh, go ahead.
oh yeah, I mean we go our flyering. I call it targeted flyering. What we kind of do is like Vandy is a young biracial girl with very curly hair. So we look at her and go, okay, where would she go? So we kind of tailor it to that. With Vance, we kind of tailored it to what he had done or what we saw that he could have done and kind of finesse it is probably the best word for it.
Okay, yeah. Is there a point, and I guess with um with the mostly harmless case, that would might be the prime example, but is
Mhm.
there a point after the investigation has been done where are you satisfied with the outcome, or do you ever kind of feel like there were things that could have been done better, or are you able to move on to the next one and not focus on what you've already worked on prior to?
I've had people come to me now and go, honestly, we want to give you some peace. We think we know what was wrong with him and what they told me. And I'm like, oh, that fits. It kind of puts pieces. We had like little things that we still don't know where he got the name Ben Bellamy from.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
uh
we don't know that. That's the one thing we don't know. Uh, but the little things like when he was found, there was food there. Why didn't he eat it? What set him off to leave New York? Well, that we'll never know. But it was like there's like little things.
right, like the little unsolvable things, you're just able to kind of accept them for that and move on.
When the people came to me, explain, they go, look, this is what we think it was, and they explained it to me, and I go, oh, some of them fell into place, and you go, yeah, those make sense. Some things we're never gonna know. Like the only person that knew what set him off on his truck is him, and he left no answers.
Right, right. um well, we are approaching that hour. I didn't expect it to feel like it was going to pass this quickly. This is the first one that I've done just on my own. So I hope it was painless for you.
It was, yes.
Okay, awesome. I appreciate you coming on. Um, I always give the last moment to the guest to
Mhm.
promote. I believe you have your Facebook group at least that you can promote, and I'll let you go ahead and do that.
Please come join us at Unidentified, Nameless, and Never Forgotten and help solve a case. You can also help solve a case by getting your DNA done through Ancestry or 23andMe and downloading to GEDmatch and Family Tree DNA. You can help connect the dots and solve a cold case or send someone home, like Vandy or others.
And on that, I would like to ask anybody listening right now, go back and listen to the finer details that she gave about that case, and maybe when you're scrolling through TikTok or watching Bigfoot videos, take a couple of minutes and see what you can do to help solve it. My son is now joining us on the show. Um, you picked a good time, buddy. We're wrapping up. Yeah, but see what you can do to help solve this case, and reach out to me, reach out to Christie, and I want to thank you for joining the show.
You're welcome.
Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna hit the outro, and we will see everyone again next time.
The preceding program has been brought to you by the Watchers Podcast Network. If you enjoyed the show, please like, subscribe, and share with your friends to help grow our network. Check us out on all social media platforms, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. And until next time, thanks for your support.
Thanks for squatching.